Okay, welcome to this meeting of the decision session Executive Member for Finance and Performance, today being held in consultation with the Executive Member for Housing and Safer Neighbourhoods for agenda item 4. Item 1 on the agenda is declarations of interest. I have no interest to declare. Councillor Craghill?
No interest.
Item 2 is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of November. Are you happy to agree those as a correct record?
Yes.
Okay, I'll sign those when I get a moment. Item 3, public participation. We've had nobody registered to speak, so I will go straight to item 4, which is the Interim Financial Inclusion Welfare Benefits Report. I'll hand over to Pauline Stutchfield.
Thank you, Chair. This report is a 6-monthly report that you receive at this meeting as joint portfolio holders for financial inclusion. And whilst I won't go through the whole report, I would like to say that the impact of the pandemic continues from a financial inclusion perspective. There is still a high number of people, including working people, on benefits, although this is at a low level compared to the region and UK position. And some of the difficulties can be seen also in the housing rent arrears part of the report. The Council has sought to continue to invest in supporting residents in financial difficulty, and at the end of September agreed to invest in further early intervention schemes, digital inclusion activity, and to support residents with long-term debts. And of course, we've had further funding announced in terms of the household support grant. So David's going to update you shortly on the current position with grant giving. And you've continued to support funding for the voluntary and community sector organisations in the city that are working also alongside our community hubs, staff and volunteers. Just if I can take you to table 2 on page 9, as at the end of September, in terms of the support that has been given by both the council and government, we'd spent around £1.5 million. With the household support grant and further funding that you've agreed, we're forecast £2.5 to £3 million. We're investing in additional support for residents, recognising the continued impacts on residents of the pandemic. But underneath that, we are still supporting residents to seek to address, to support understanding and supporting them on long-term debt issues. If I can take you then to paragraph 28, and particularly the universal credit figures, which is generally used as an indicator of how well things are going, you will still see that by the end of September, we were still double the amount of universal credit claimants that were claiming prior to the pandemic, and that currently sits still around 12,000 even at today. So we are looking as a council to understand the drivers of the numbers, importantly, so that we can close the gap between welfare support and getting people into the available jobs that we know are there within the city. Around half of those claimants are in work. Still facing, it's not that people are out of work, but they are in work, but they're in low paid jobs and have all the challenges around the cost of housing, cost of living, particularly fuel and food, and also the cost of childcare. If I can take you to paragraph 29, there's an additional almost £1 million there from the work of our welfare benefits officers within our teams, who go out and directly contact residents and generate further support in the city. If I can then take you to the work of the Financial Inclusion Steering Group, and in the annex you can see the midterm report of the grant activities supported by the Financial Inclusion Steering Group, and the average of £100,000 spent per year on these schemes delivered by the community voluntary sector. And it always amazes me, especially when we do the year-end calculation of how much impact these schemes generate, the social value generated from the relatively small investment comparatively. And you can see in bold in each of those schemes what a difference those schemes are making to our residents, and critically important, those schemes have continued to operate without any pause in proceedings. So despite any difficulties these organisations are having through the pandemic, they have still delivered all of the benefits that they have agreed to deliver. So I just want to thank all of those partners in the city that are continue to do that work. So David's just going to take you through the current figures and particularly around the grant giving work that we're doing.
Yeah, so in terms of the latest government grant scheme, the household support scheme, we sent out some £383,000 to residents last week. That's 2,600 residents who received grants between £100 and £250. The majority of those are all direct payments and into the customers' bank accounts. That's part of what will be a second payment. So we're doing a payment before Christmas, as I said, that went out last week, and the second payment will go out in February, again to the same residents and any new residents who apply between now and then. In terms of the ongoing COVID and the isolation payments, the £500 payments, we've now issued over 2,156 payments, totaling some £1,078,000 to residents within the city. Council tax support, the number of claimants on council tax support has actually fallen in November to 5,325, which is 125 less than what we had at the end of October. In terms of the council social fund, the WIFAS scheme, we've spent some £185,000 at the end of last week. The actual outturn is slightly higher than what's in this report. We're now predicting 104%. I have to say that does fluctuate from week to week depending on payments are made. And as I always say around this, the WIFAS scheme gets some protection because of the government schemes we've been running since last December. So everything from the winter support grant through the local COVID support grant and now the household support fund have mitigated some of the demands we might have had against WIFAS if those schemes weren't in place. Pauline touched on the benefit gain, which was some £800,000, and I have the mid-year figures on that. So the benefit gain that we've made for residents in the city now stands at just over £1.5 million at the end of Q2. In terms of the latest universal credit figures, they are down slightly on September. We're always a little bit behind with these because DWP don't publish them that quickly. But we're at 12,003 at the end of October is the number of people on universal credit in the city. Okay, thank you.
So if I can ask members to, if you've got any questions and to note the report. Thank you.
Councillor Crackhill.
Thank you. Yes, I've just got a couple of comments, really. There's a lot of detail in the report. I just really wanted to comment that obviously this winter is proving to be a very difficult time for a lot of York residents with so many pressures coming together. Now, that's certainly the case. And the council simply doesn't have the capacity to fully compensate everyone for the shortfalls in the government's welfare benefits system. For example, the disgraceful withdrawal of the £20 a week universal credit just when people needed it most. And the difficulties you mentioned in the paper that are put in the way of people trying to navigate the universal credit system. As the paper says, housing arrears have continued to increase in recent months, which is one indicator, and that is partly due to the unhelpful way the system works, particularly for new claimants who've lost employment due to COVID or had to make changes. But housing officers, along with all the other officers you detail, continue to support tenants and link them to all available forms of assistance. And it is good to note there's a few bright spots there, with arrears increases being less dramatic than in 2020 and some reductions in April and September. So I think overall this report just shows very positive work that council staff have been doing over the last 6 months to support our worst off residents as much as possible. We've distributed funds as quickly and effectively as possible when they've been forthcoming. We've topped these up with direct and additional council investment through the York Financial Assistance Scheme. And we've developed community support systems that link funding with financial and other kinds of advice that help family incomes go further. And I was going to mention that, as you did, Pauline, with respect to the importance of getting good advice, the work of the welfare benefits and adult social care advisors, who made over £3 million of welfare benefit gains in 2021 and have continued to do so, as you said, in the first 6 months of this year. And I think that's fantastic work that should be recognised alongside all the other work. And as you said, just finally, in a similar way, the community-based services that we fund through the financial inclusion funds, also they go beyond direct hardship payments to help residents manage their money, receive their benefit entitlements, deal with debt, retrain and access employment, and manage mental health issues. And as you said, those schemes have continued despite all the challenges. So I'm very happy to note the report and all the good work that's done by officers.
Thank you, Councillor Crackhill. I think that probably covers most of what I would say. I think, as you mentioned, there is a lot of detail, a lot of statistics, and a lot of numbers in this report. But what's important to remember is behind all that, it's actually people and people's lives that are being affected by this. And I think that's something that perhaps doesn't come across quite the way in the numbers. But I know David shares with us often some of the comments from clients and customers about what a real impact this makes on their lives and how it's really going a long way to helping them. It's an area that's always been key to us, and it was important for us that we made sure that we have, as we mentioned earlier this morning, additional resources available in next year's budget, if approved as a going to executive, to make sure we're able to implement these schemes and more schemes going forward into the next year. So I think with that one, I'm happy to agree the recommendations on page 7, paragraph 2. Okay, agreed. Councillor Crackhill, you're welcome to stay for discussion on HR software, or you are more than welcome to leave.
Important as no doubt. Important as it is, I believe.
Similarly, David, you don't feel you have to go if you want to stay in this. Okay, that takes us to agenda item 5, which is the approval of ICT procurements with a whole life contract value of over 250,000. And I'll hand over to Pauline again.
Thank you, Chair. Just introduce Linda Howe from HR, who can answer any questions on the HR system. So this is a routine report for this meeting, although you've not had one for quite a while. Unfortunately, it's a retrospective report, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is around capacity, officer capacity during COVID, which has meant that it's appeared late in the day. The other reason is that we normally see these reports come through the ICT board, and we missed this one. So we'll do a lessons learned around that. Normally, all system procurements come through the ICT board, and then the decision-making route is agreed there, and we have some forewarning of that. And that indeed, it did follow that process previous to this report, in that the original intention was to procure a full end-to-end HR system. But you may remember our discussions that would cost in excess of £1 million. And so we went back to look at whether we needed to fully replace the system or whether we could extend the use of the system. And that's the conclusion that we've come to. And I think this procurement is good value. There's a minimal increase in costs. And for that, we're getting another module to assist with case management HR. And importantly, critical business continuity has been secured. So I think overall there's been quite a significant benefit in taking the extra time to review the method of procurement. That said, 3 years will pass very quickly, And again, it gives an opportunity for the new head of HR to look at needs going forward. So in terms of the lateness of the report, we did do an officer decision, which is in line with the Constitution, but mindful of the need to be transparent around the capital programme and the revenue spend on ICT. This report's come before you, Chair, for noting, and either myself or Linda can answer any questions.
Anything in particular you wanted to add, Linda? Or?
No, I think Pauline's covered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, no questions. I say it's relatively routine. It's just making sure that we're as open and transparent as possible. So happy to agree the recommendation on page 27, paragraph 3.
Thank you, Chair.
I am not aware of any urgent business, so I'm happy at that point to declare the meeting closed. Thank you.